What if your JD Edwards system could catch a hacker before they even touched your data? And what if it learned from every attempt, getting smarter each time? In this episode, we're talking about how AI powered threat detection is giving JD Edwards environments real time awareness and resilience. You'll hear how artificial intelligence is transforming ERP security, how it works under the hood, and what steps you can take to make your JD Edwards environment safer today. Today's topic: security, and not the boring kind. As cyber threats evolve, traditional defenses just can't keep up, but AI can. It's helping JD Edwards environments detect and stop attacks before they even start. Joining us today is Sean Mead, ERP Information Security Officer, to explain how AI powered threat detection works and why it's becoming such a large player in information security. Sean, how are you doing today? Thanks for coming back onto the podcast, recurring guest, put it on the resume.
Doing very well today, Nate. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on talking a little bit security, talking more ERP side, more full cybersecurity, not our typical JD Edwards lens. But let's start with the challenge. What kind of threats are JD Edwards environments and other environments facing today?
The same ones that we usually do. I mean, I don't mean to downplay that, but it's just an evolved sense of the types of things we deal with all the time. We're still dealing with bad guys, for lack of a better term. I know that we can say nefarious actors, we can use all kinds of things, but the dark side, if you're a Star Wars fan, however you want to word it, but we have plenty of people who want to operate in a nefarious manner, in uh, a negative manner, and they want to kind of take the quick road and try and steal instead of produce. And as long as that's happening, we are going to have to protect ourselves because they're pretty dedicated to their craft.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the Death Eaters out there, for any Harry Potter fans out there. Very dedicated. They're following Voldemort, some say, or the one who should not be named, I guess. All right, enough of the movie references. Why are they harder to detect than they may like used to be, you know?
Well, some of it is attitude. In You go back far enough, and people just want to make a name for themselves. Now they want to make money, and as far as why is it more difficult now? Well, the same reason that we become more efficient at anything. Everyone gets better with experience, and then that experience gets passed on. So as people do this longer and longer, and as we fight and go back and forth, actually look at a tennis player, look at a boxer, look at any sport you wish, and they wind up studying things that have worked, things that had not, and that's how they create their new plays or new strategies, and that's based on experience. So there's a lot of experience out there. The internet's been out for a while, and people are learning to use it in lots of positive ways, but the negative is definitely increasing as well.
Yeah, and as a gamer myself, PlayStation has definitely not learned from their mistakes over the years, which is crazy to me. But you're right. There's a lot of people that are going after different types of stuff, but what what are these attackers truly going for? Like, yeah, you can look at the PlayStation view, but you can look at it from JD Edwards or one of the many ERPs out there today. What are they targeting? Is it data, credentials, integrations? What are they looking for?
Well, again, not meaning to sound flippant, but yes to all. It's it depends on what stage they're at in an attack. To tell you the truth, it still comes down to they want money. They want to either make money. They want to ransom or take your business hostage until they're paid. So any form of information that can possibly help them. I mean, I know that we look at things such as, well, this is my most critical data. I need to really shield it. Good plan. And that is definitely a step that should be taken. But we need to realize that even now, email phishing is still one of the most powerful forms of the beginning of an attack. And the reason for that is you can't get started until you start making your way through the door. Once I get through the door, then I can try and look around the room and see, oh, look, there's another door. Here's this. There are no cameras right in that spot right there. That's the kind of stuff that they're trying to do, and that's why all of that is a target. Any type of information that will allow them to step foot into that door and of course, then get to the, to use a candy reference, they wanna go through the hard shell and get to that soft candy center, and, once they get into there, that was the target, yes, but they will take anything they can get to maneuver with which to maneuver. If that makes
Only Oh, it really does. It's all about the question of how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop.
right.
And yeah, and you bring up fishing, which is honestly one of the funniest things out there. Like you would think that, I mean, I've learned about email phishing since I was a kid because it's been around. Obviously, people that are older than me, they've been learning about it since their late 20s, whatever, at this point. But are there any other blind spots, like other than phishing, that maybe some organizations don't really realize that they have?
So, yeah, strangely enough, one of the blind spots is process. I know that sounds weird to say in the form of information security, but process is how we build our security policies, business processes. So, I know of a particular incident that about which I was made aware, where the process was actually the biggest problem. You had one person who was doing the processing of invoices. And that one person then was asked, "Hey, do you mind if we change the email that we're using? Send it to this one instead of that one." Well, in that case, the nefarious actors only had to fool one person, and they did successfully do that. If the process had had multiple checkpoints, layers, then that would have made a huge difference. So process makes a big difference in things. It allows security to embed itself in between those layers. And the more of those layers there are, the safer you are. And I'm using that term loosely because obviously, especially in my position, I consider safety to be an illusion. So, but the point being, it takes them longer to eat through the layers, if you will. So that's one validation of things, making sure that again, and it sort of branches, dovetails with the process when we're validating things. Is this really something that this person would normally do or has authority to do? So putting in those proper checkpoints, those are the kind of blind spots that really can make a big difference. And of course, like we just said, email is a big one. Email phishing is still, I mean, those clicks. I will say I did see a video not too long ago where a company really did get kind of rough on their email phishing campaign and testing, and they sent something out and said, "Anyone who's nearby, come into the office. Please go ahead and log into a local restaurant's website, order your food, and come on in for a large meeting." And it turns out there was no large meeting other than the 3-hour course on email phishing. If they did click on it and wound up coming in because of that, and in at least one case, the one that I saw, their food was delivered. They actually did place the order in the whole ball of wax. All that to say, however things can be played. Some of the internal chat programs that companies use, uh, WebEx is one that can be used. WebEx chats, however communications occur internally, I really believe that one of the things that would help and eliminate a lot of blind spots is simply having people to communicate with each other. Hey, did you really send this? So again, comes back to validating and knowing our surroundings. Those are the blind
Mhm.
spots. Those are bigger blind spots than we realize at times. Therefore,
Exactly. And processes, not to go back to the first point, they should be like ogres. They should have layers. Also like onions. All right, enough movie quotes. I know, I know. Oh, but seriously, though,
that's good. Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. They're also hey, everyone likes cake. Cake has layers too. All right. All right. But yeah, like it's those simple things. Like I know that we do a lot of fishing here, or at least testing for fishing here at ERP Suites. And we out earlier on, I definitely clicked on one, who hasn't, but it's all about the process and it's all about getting yourself prepared and your workforce prepared. So I'm glad that we do that. And it's something that a lot of companies these days have really adapted to, which is great. Like, yes, that's a very funny way of like testing it, of sending out a phishing email and making people come into the office and that type of stuff. It's very funny, but it's also a great learning point of all these people wasted a bunch of time, bunch of effort just to come into the office, and then they have to sit there for 3 hours to learn about phishing emails, which is hilarious, hilarious. But to think about the actual security side of it, why are traditional methods like firewalls or even user access controls, or why are those not enough anymore?
Well, we're going back to that first principle, which is everyone's getting better with experience. And so we know that firewalls are difficult to get through just because they're they serve a very specific purpose. But the holes that are there to allow legitimate traffic through, unfortunately, those also become the major points where illegitimate traffic tries to pass. So more people are on the internet all the time. Another big one is commercialization of ransomware. So they're not they're not just making money by their own attacks anymore. Now they're actually making this into a product that they sell to someone else, and it could be anyone. It could be a single disgruntled employee, and they may have access to some funds or get some others together and other people who are disgruntled and then buy that ransomware and use that. So it's not just single individuals, it's not even just single groups anymore. Now it's a productization of the entire process. So between commercialization of ransomware and other nefarious products, there's a lot going on there. And of course, now things are being engaged in the psychological realm, which comes back a lot to our email phishing. The psychology of things. What do people normally do? How do they normally react? And those are big factors. That's why it's not the same as it used to be. It really is not.
Yeah, exactly. And even with like a shift to the hybrid and cloud hosted JDE models that you see out here these days, how has maybe that even changed the game even more?
Well, so once we start doing a hybrid situation, that means I have some here and I have some there. And if I'm using these two together, then something's transversing, and it's usually transversing the internet. So once we get out on the internet, you're getting into a DMZ, if you will. You're getting into an area that has landmines, that has all kinds of stuff firing all over the place. So when we look at that hybrid environment, now I am not just in my own data center, in my own building anymore. We've outsourced a lot of these things, and as we do so, there are a lot of security protocols, don't get me wrong, but going with what you were stating as far as the why does this add in another layer? Well, it's because now the data that would have stayed in a building in the past or in a private network in the past, now we are transversing. So we have to put a lot more shields up along that path.
Yeah.
And we're going into the whole credentials thing, and those being stolen. Lots of
Yeah.
stuff along that path.
Yeah, and that path is obviously not something that a lot of people think about anymore of why can't I just transmit my data from one point to the other point? Where's the security? They think that it's all built out for them. And it's not that it isn't like, yeah, there's certain security, certain guidelines that everyone has to follow, but how safe is that truly? Who's to say? You have to make sure that you know your own security and if it is specific information that you don't want to get out there, if it's credentials, if it's secure data, if it's sensitive topics that are out there, it's all about your infrastructure and what you want to have on that data. But I can sit here on the soapbox and preach about it all day. So now that we know what we're up against, how exactly would AI detect and even stop threats before they cause real damage?
So we're going to have to feed information to AI in some form. That's the first P. So once we do that, the thing about AI is it's an advanced analyst. It winds up doing things at a higher speed in some cases. I mean, let's just face our own limitations. We don't crunch numbers, or at least I'd say most of the population does not crunch numbers as quickly as a computer does. So when the AI gets a hold of that, the patterns that we've told it should be there versus the patterns that it may find, it will go through that much more quickly and efficiently. I still haven't met, I guess we could program one to do this, to emulate humans even more if we wanted to, but I'm not sure we do. And that would be to make it to where it has to go to sleep. The nice thing about AI right now is it just keeps running. It's going to keep chewing through all of that stuff and everything while we go to sleep. We get back up and suddenly we've got results. So the way that it does that, and by doing that through all hours, 24 by 7, the whole year, all of that, it can compile this data and go through compiled data much more efficiently than we can as humans most of the time. So that's actually its biggest contribution in all of this. That's what AI does to help us to prevent those attacks from becoming incidents, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, of course it does. It's like that intern that you never pay and you don't allow to go to sleep. And miss those days of being the intern myself. But let me tell you, I'm glad that I get to sleep these days, let me say. Um, but yeah, that's the type of thing that, obviously we want them to, like a lot of these companies are trying to make their AIs more human, which I've seen iRobot. I don't know if we should do that, but whatever. Not my monkey, not my circus. That's what I say. So when you look at all of these steps that they are really putting into AI, what types of data are they really monitoring? Like, yes, it can be inside JD Edwards, but also outside of JD Edwards. What have you seen in the cybersecurity space that AI is truly monitoring?
So, uh, well, it's going to monitor anything that we give it, and hopefully it's not grabbing stuff that we don't. But as far as it almost sounds like your question goes into a scoping question, and that is, what do we want AI to be looking at? And that scope, quite honestly, can be as small as just the communications in this one server, all the way to I want it to look at every single packet that goes across our entire network, no matter where that is. I want it to see everything at every server. We get to determine that scope, and that is that is how we hand that off. So AI then starts analyzing this, and quite honestly, the most important thing that we can do with AI and with that data is to create something called a baseline. And I know we can relate that to other things, but a baseline AI, its greatest efficiency, greatest speed will be achieved when it can look at something and instead of having to analyze or how would I put it, call out every piece of data as if every piece of data is an alert, it can look at it and it basically says, okay, all of this is expected. All of this is absolutely expected, except for this one little bump right here. I know I saw just one little bump, but because I'm an AI instead of a human, I can take the time and investigate that. And there is no real loss if there was nothing there, but it could be an indicator of something that is trying to break through, has broken through. That's the way the AI. So those models that we form in that baseline, those are the things that allow AI to really help us out and kind of call it out. And we determine the scope. We determine how much we want it to see. Did that,
Yeah, exactly.
that answer your
And yeah, of course. And it even goes a little bit deeper too, because with AI and with how a lot of these things are built, they can go through data that it'll take a human many, many years to even try to crack. Which is, yes, it's great. It's also scary, but we don't have to talk about the scary side of that. Um, but it's really great in that way of they can really dive deep, they being an AI machine, but still they, they can really dive deep into some of these certain data. So as long as we give them the right scope, and exactly what you said, if you give them the right scope, if you give them the right tools and understanding of your model, they could hit things that you could never detect in 20 years if you gave them the time, which is great, but also scary because maybe they could find ghost things that are out there, which is also where having humans on the other side of it, making sure that they're actually finding things when they should be and not just coming up with random things that are happening. But, anyways, what role does machine learning models and behavior analytics really play in this?
Well, that comes back to those anomalies and those baselines. So machine learning, it actually takes models and they can be very, very complex. They can be very simple. It could be as simple as this server should only speak to this server ever. It could be as complex as I need to know all of the communications that are happening between this whole server farm, and I need to know if anything's out of the ordinary. And, anytime we get into something fuzzy like that, that's when, like you said, we start looking at humans taking a long time to do that. So we create the models as well as we can, but machine learning, thus its name, should be also looking and saying, you didn't tell me about this specifically. So is this okay? We get to say, yeah, that's okay. Don't worry about that one. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that one and report as an alert. By the way, this other thing happened and it's sort of different from this, a little bit the same, but a little different. And then we get to say, you know what? That really isn't exactly what I would expect. So let's investigate that. That's the way the machine learning and those models. Now, behavioral, that again comes down to, so to give you an example of AI in use, we can have a person who has high level privileges in systems in an environment, and they normally come in and they do A, B, and C. And A, B, and C has to do with transferring some files from this one to that one, that kind of stuff. But then this user, which we've created this baseline now by watching it, AI's created a baseline. This user suddenly one night starts downloading files from server D that they've never, and to which they've never logged. Now they have the rights to do it. They have the authority to do it, but they've never downloaded anything from that before. That is the kind of stuff where AI and machine learning really comes into a great, great play, because that's when that small thing that would not necessarily be noticed gets caught and reported out. And then we can find out, hey, why were you in there? Not in a, hey, I'm coming after you, but rather instead we just need to know, you had the authority to get into that system, but was it you that was actually downloading that? Because if not, well, we've got more work to do. So
Yeah.
did that help? Does that round the picture out properly?
Yeah, I mean, I assume that that kind of goes into the like recognizing anomalies and even suspicious behavior, right? Like, if obviously it's what you give the AI model, right? And am I right about that? Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
So it's all about teaching them what is normal and what's not normal. I assume that it's more of you give them certain data, like this is our backlog of this is what people are usually doing,
Mhm.
and then they use that and put it against like what is actually happening in the business today. Am I right about that or no?
Yes, that's the beginning. That's the model, and then you let it run for a bit. So to have AI really do the best job for you, you kind of need it in an environment when at the beginning when it's kind of safe and you know what's going on and you know what normal is, and then you have to evaluate it. So the beginning, that ramp up time can be a little bit tedious, but the beauty is every time we answer a question like, that traffic's okay, I'm not sure about this, but this traffic is okay. Every time we answer that for the AI, it incorporates that into the baseline. And then that becomes yet another thing that's no longer a false positive, which buys us time, efficiency, and quite honestly, resources. So yes, you're on absolutely the correct path. That is the beginning of how it grows.
Yeah, that
Absolutely.
makes a lot. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, I mean, to give AI that amount of data, especially right now, I mean, with the larger AI models that are out there, they're not really trustworthy. Hell, I mean, even the ChatGPT CEO was like, I don't know why people trust this. They shouldn't. And I'm like, red flag, but sure, why not? I guess. Obviously, there are other models that are built specifically into specific servers, so they can't really give that data out. There's differences in there, more protections, more governance and compliance that they have to follow for certain businesses. But how does this all really integrate into even like OCI or maybe just ERP suites managed services?
So OCI has in their Cloud Guard, they actually have AI as part of that for many of the reasons we've just described, and we can make that again. We can scope it narrow, or we can make it broad, and then we have to work with it a little bit to be able to tell it, this is good, this is bad, that kind of stuff, or at least always say, let it know when something's good, and then it should recognize an anomaly and say, is this bad? So the way that that works into all of this is so OCI being a hosting environment and ERP suites hosting as well and managed services, we want to be able to get that data and get it to it in such a way to where it will basically say this is not normal. That's its real strength, because it's not going to know. I mean, eventually it could, and it all depends on, like we've said, how close we want to get to Skynet and all of that kind of stuff. But when we're looking at, we're just looking for anomalies. We're looking for the exception rather than the rule, so that we can look more at the exception, and those rules then start becoming more standardized. And for OCI and ERP suites as a managed service, as a hosting environment, either one, the whole idea is this is normal, this is not. And I hate to keep coming back to that, but that really is the greatest power of AI in my opinion, is putting the guardrails on properly to where it doesn't just go out and do, like you said, we don't want it to make decisions for us as far as business decisions or things of that nature. At least I'm not ready for that kind of thing. But I do believe it can make certain decisions where it has been trained, and especially in the area of, now, this is normal and this is not. Of course, getting that normal down, we want to make sure that someone cannot mimic that, but normal is normal. So an anomaly should always pop up.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a few companies out there that have actually made an AI entity into their CEO. I don't know if we're ready for that. Personally, I wouldn't trust it. I don't really trust robots like that, but whatever, to each their own. But let's talk about the impact side of it. We've been talking a lot about what AI is, what it can bring to the table, but let's talk about why businesses should truly invest in this or even think about it in terms of a security model. So, for the people that are managing JD Edwards, what changes when AI enters the security picture?
So so let's look at internal and external. Internally, uh, it's not going to be AI working on the internals itself, but if we have the right security functions turned on, for lack of a better term, in JDE, and then use either third-party products or however we want to draw that data out. I'm just going to leave it that there are ways to do that. When we export that data, we can export who logged in, what did they do, what kind of checks were written today, what kind of inventory do we have today, and have, again, coming back to that, this is normal, this is an anomaly. So when we are exporting that data and allowing the AI to go through that kind of detail and finding that, one of the greatest discoveries ever made and one of the biggest scams that was ever done was because someone could not justify a one penny difference in their accounting book. And that's amazing that a person did that. But that's kind of what we want the AI for, so that we don't have to, as a human, go to that level unless we just like it that much. But that is that is how it impacts. So internally, do we have a good process? And we can actually have the AI basically say, all right, these people logged in, this particular thing was made it from, conception to paying out. Was that the right process? It lets us also analyze our own processes. So that's the internal. The external comes back to the communications on the network. Do we expect this server to be communicating with this one? And if we even get down to the packet level, is this the right kind of traffic that should be going across? Is this something weird? Is this encrypted? Whereas this is not, and it shouldn't have been, or vice versa. That's how I can help with the JD environment specifically.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, I think the biggest scam ever was the Fire Festival. I don't know if you know what that one was, but it was basically this guy set up this entire festival that actually had no headliners, no bands of any kind. You flew to this island and then you were stuck there. Crazy to say, but that was probably the best scam out there. Now, if AI was around, it probably could have been able to tell you that this thing's a scam. There's no one signed up. There are no contracts in there. No one's going. There's no way home. All of these things could have been brought up. But of course, AI wasn't really around back then. But enough joking around, I guess. What's the benefit of reducing false positives or alert fatigue for AI or for specifically IT teams?
So we'll go with efficiency. Number one, now our human resources can be looking at and evaluating real events, or at least, or and possibly eliminating them and turning them into, uh, uh, this was a false positive. We no longer have to worry about that. Once you start being able to do that and reducing the noise, because quite honestly, it turns alerts to where they're actually urgent and real. Otherwise, you have white noise, and white noise is never going to catch anyone's attention. Its very definition tells us it's just in the background. It's just this layer of noise, and there's nothing that we're picking out of it. And that's what too many alerts winds up doing. It becomes an overload on people's people's ability to get the job done. But if we wind up focusing on, this is a real event. All the rest of this, those things are explainable, all that kind of stuff. But this is a real event, and I want our people working on this event. So efficiency is there. I know this sounds funny, but job satisfaction. Uh,
Mhm.
when people get to when they're not having to deal with all this false stuff, and what they see is something really to look at. And I'm again, sometimes we look at the psychological for the positives, and that is job satisfaction is going to equal job interest, which is also going to make people more aware of their surroundings and their own job. And that really is a very powerful tool for security to have, is the psychological impact. And that's a lot of what that does. That's where AI can help us to get rid of all that noise and start looking at what's real.
Yeah, exactly. If someone's looking at 100 alerts a day and only like what 90% or 90% of them aren't actual alerts, what I mean, you're just wasting your time, and it'll get to the point where if you see something that is along the lines of one of those alerts, you'd be like, "Oh, that's not a big deal." Or what if it is? You never really know.
And I
And yeah.
realize we look at HR, we look at human resources very often as quote sunk cost. But the fact of the matter is that's still a tool, and I'm not trying to downplay humans on this, but my point is that's still something that we have as a resource. That's better. We have something as a resource, and we're not using it well. And this is what gives you a quote leg up on the competition. Quite honestly, is how well can you operate with X number of resources compared to someone else with the same number of resources? The differentiator is going to be someone's doing it more efficiently. And those may be human resources. Sometimes in the past, I believe people have looked at that and said, well, I'm paying that salary anyway. So even though it wasted some of their time, yeah, but what else could they have been working on? I mean, they could have been coming up with another idea that winds up protecting us better, or a more efficient way of doing a particular type of security. So all of that is important.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the true payoff here of AI being able to connect those dots faster than a human can. That's the true payoff of AI can do about this much right now. Yes, they're great at that tiny little bit, but the human side of it is still there. Like we need to be able to open ourselves up and have more time for bigger problems that are out there in the world other than, oh, there was like this little dot, somebody downloaded something from somewhere that they shouldn't have or whatever. Yes, it's still important. I'm not saying it's not. But to shift through, like to go through a bunch of logs just to find out one little anomaly takes too much time, way too much time. Well, what's the benefit to uptime, compliance, or even business continuity?
So uptime is, any security breach or incident or however you want to term it, security issue, any of that is going to cost time. And in many cases, it can cost downtime. Uh, we've, a large provider recently had an outage, and a lot of people were reminded of the pain of downtime when it comes to computing resources. So we want to keep that kind of stuff in mind because as far as that it plays into reliability, trust. I've worked for a company before that's one thing I really loved, and it made a great deal of sense in their industry was that they actually put a price on returns, for lack of a better term, or something that had to be recalled. They considered that to have a price, and instead of just this innocuous idea of, well, that might have hurt our reputation or something, they actually built that into the cost. And then they developed a number around that, which helped to show, no, this was pretty painful, and because it hit our reputation, and our reputation then impacts new business as well as current business, all of these things. So that's where the efficiency becomes very important when it comes to what AI can do for us. And compliance, well, again, uptime is a compliance. SLAs are a compliance. Now, if we go into things such as whatever it may be, HIPAA, PCI, we can go into all kinds of different compliance, ISOs, SOX, those different areas. All of these things wind up having a need for a chain of evidence is about the best way I can put it. And it really is, just like we have in our justice system, there needs to be a chain of evidence, not only to let us see what is working properly. And the way we can validate that something's working properly is by being able to trace that chain. But it also helps us to see if something's gone awry and if something's broken. Of course, if something's broken in the information security area, it lets us know we probably have a significant issue or we have a security breach, whatever that may be. So that's how it helps in those areas. Compliance requires a chain of custody, if you will, and that's that AI can wind up providing that because the things that people hate the most when it comes to paperwork are just check boxes. I have to check this box every time I have this particular form and all that kind of stuff. And AI doesn't care. And an AI will wind up saying, oh, not only, or you can tell the AI, I'll put it that way. Hopefully it doesn't do it on its own. No, hey, I want you to check on this. Not only do I want you to have this checkbox, but I want you to now place this in this spot, and I may ask you to find that again later. And suddenly we have a much easier time when it comes to compliance and efficiency.
Yeah, it's all about teaching it. It all goes back to that idea of teaching your AI models to truly help your business and help what you're trying to accomplish.
Correct.
Um, but talking about this tech a little bit deeper, have you seen people use it more for like prevention, or are they seeing like response time improvements? Is there anything that they're truly using it out there right now that people that are listening right now might not even think of?
So I believe both of those are valid. Prevention. So that's an interesting word. It's kind of like proactive when you're talking about that in information security. eh, It's relative in that we can put certain precautions and stopgaps in place, but prevention in the security world, especially, is really it goes into. I'll just make it sound grandiose. The theory of time itself. Uh, the We want to slow time down when we want to be able to do that magical bubble that has a slower time than anything else. And when a nefarious actor tries to come in and attack us, we want them to enter into that slower time zone, if you will. And it buys us time to stop, hopefully get in front of the attack and stop it. It always has to do with time. So prevention, absolutely. It prevents them from getting to the next level if we can find them fast enough. So I have seen companies using that. We wind up doing some of that ourselves. We use that to help us to see something as it's approaching and then get to stop or even move the target. There are all kinds of things. It buys us options. Prevention is actually equivalent to it gives us options to avoid the next step in the attack. I've seen that. We've done that. And as far as so response time is going to, and let's look at that in two different ways as well. So response time to an active threat, yes, that's one thing. So that's the pure security version of it. But response time in allowing AI to see, this server, these 5 servers keep trying to send something to this one, and then it sends something back to each one. And this particular server might be getting overloaded. As we use it to analyze traffic for security, it can also be used to analyze traffic for an inefficient algorithm. It makes things more not only reliable, but it definitely drives up efficiency and therefore response time. So when we find inefficient patterns in the network, whether it be we need to configure this network switch or this router or something differently. We need to go a different route from A to B to make it more efficient. All of these things can actually be aided by AI, and whether we realize it or not, sometimes when we do things, and I can speak to this as far as yes, we've done this. We've done some analysis on the security side and it winds up helping us to find, you know what, we could just simply do this in a different way and it's going to be better. So whether you're using it directly to improve that efficiency and that response time or indirectly, yes, it can definitely have that impact. And I've seen it as both, like I said, and one can lead to the other. So both of those are great applications for AI.
Yeah. And I mean, we've talked a lot about all the different value that you can truly get from this throughout this entire episode, so far at least. When you're really looking deeply into AI and threat detection, sure, but what's the real ROI that you can see from it just by, I don't know, like adapting some of these AI detection models?
So the ROIs come in time. Again, once we have the baseline and things of that nature, your ROI comes in time better spent elsewhere. That really is the way I would look at AI's greatest contribution to any ROI where it has an involvement. And for us, we've actually seen, again, when you start doing that whole analysis that gets rid of all those false positives, if you take that and actually figure, well, these 3 people are costing us this much money, and we've got them having to stare at a screen, and 90% of what they're staring at is not worth looking at. It's just not really there. Then we can wind up now freeing up that time, and we are using those resources so much more efficiently. And that is its own ROI. Now, I realize that sometimes that's not seen immediately on a literal bottom line because, again, that comes back to that whole, well, it's a sunk cost and things of that nature. But in creativity and in moving forward, it's got a huge ROI. And I wish we did a better job as just businesses across the board. And I'm not pointing at anyone, internal or external specifically, but being able to do a job where we could measure that, we would actually see just how fast that ROI occurs compared to our investment. if we would measure that across a little bit of a span of time and say, you know what, these three people, they've been 90% more efficient than they were before. And we have all of these new ideas that we can now work with which we can work. It's an amazing thing. It's actually very freeing. And I think it's where the ROI really comes through with an AI is it may not always be seen on that literal bottom line, but it really does make a difference with the efficiency of your people.
And exactly. It might affect a few jobs here and there in terms of freeing up time, allowing them to truly do what they were brought there to do.
Mhm.
There might be some positions out there that somebody was like, yeah, I'll take that job because I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And really all they're doing is this one little task because it takes up so much time. As somebody who has actually had to do that, as it was what my internship truly was, because I thought I was going to be doing all of this. I ended up doing a lot of paperwork, a lot of this. Um, but anyways, if someone is listening right now, but they're ready to take security more seriously, how do they start exploring AI threat detection for JD Edwards, but also other ERPs that are out there?
So my first advice would be going back to one of the principles we mentioned before, and that is begin determining what you want to see as a baseline. So as far as that quick engagement of it and that low hanging fruit, as it's usually, or as it's often worded, um, wind up looking at those processes as well as your standard network traffic. Use AI to analyze your standard network traffic. Look, these guys usually talk to each other. Jump in with that. There are lots of different products out there, lots of different ways to do this. And there are safe ways. Now, I am going to say be safe about it. You don't want this to become, as you said, on part of this, you don't want to give it all access to everything and not have rails built in to keep it from feeding directly into the uh, LLMs of every single chat program out there. And then someone just can type in and say, hey, what are these people up to? Oh, it just so happens they haven't been stopping me from getting all this information. So let me let you know what they're doing. We need rail guards. We need to do it safely. But the first thing I would state along that path is get an idea of what AI can do in the first place. Uh, and by that, have it analyze a few files. Quite honestly, that will give you more ideas than you realize. Give it a few logs. Give it a few logs. Make sure you've got the rail guards in place, but give it a few logs, network logs, and see what it can do, even with that small amount. And then you'll start getting a direction. I believe that's a good low hanging fruit to be able to show. Look, we need to invest more time and effort into this area because in just, quite honestly, if you submit some of that stuff, you might find that in just a few hours, you can justify an awful lot of time for research into how many other ways we can use this in our company. Does that help? Does that make sense with your question?
Oh, 100%. I mean, yeah, you talked a little bit about what the first steps are, which is find one point and start there. See what AI driven security can really do in certain areas of your business. Start with those quick wins. Start with the little things. Because yes, it can snowball into a billion different things for sure, but maybe you just need little things here and there, little fixes. That's okay too. It doesn't matter if you're trying to utilize it for your entire business or maybe just your very sensitive data. That's something that can save your business millions in terms of, yes, spending people on time, but also in terms of actual data breaches and security breaches that are out there. Because, yeah, we talked about it earlier of there are certain companies that are out there that have had these security breaches. And actually, I've been on one of the receiving ends of a security breach. Someone had to pay me off basically because there was a security breach and stuff like that. Your company shouldn't have to go through it. So start small, build large. That's all we can really say. If your JD Edwards system is running critical operations, it deserves modern protection. AI powered threat detection isn't the future, it's just the standard. Visit ERPSuites.com to explore how AI can strengthen your JD security and see our proven roadmap for building an intelligent defense strategy. I know Sean Mead would love to talk more and more about security, and I'm sure that if you reach out at ERPSuites.com, you connect with his team directly, and he'll give you a boatload of information of how you can make your company more secure. But that's all for today's episode of Not Your Grandpa's JD Edwards. Subscribe, leave a like, comment, send it to a colleague, anything that will help your business take that next step into security. Until next time, stay smart, stay secure, keep innovating. Catch you next time.